Hello there, and welcome back to the quiet corners of the unknown. Tonight, we will not be searching for answers. Instead, we will drift together into the questions themselves, into the silent spaces where science has yet to find its footing. For all that we have mapped and measured, for all the laws we have written down, the universe remains a place of deep and whispering mysteries. Some are vast, written in the language of starlight and cosmic voids. Others are ancient, etched into the stones of lost worlds and forgotten histories. And some are closer still, hidden within the very substance of our reality, in the energy of empty space itself. These unanswered questions are not failures, they are invitations. They remind us that our knowledge is a small island in a vast ocean of the unknown. Each mystery is a doorway to wonder, a gentle reminder that we are still explorers, still learning to read a story far grander than we can yet comprehend. So let these questions carry you tonight. Let go of the day, of the need for certainty, and allow your mind to float in the beautiful, silent expanse of what we do not know. If you enjoy this journey into quiet contemplation, feel free to like and subscribe, or to share your own thoughts in the comments below. It helps other curious minds find their way to this quiet harbor. But for now, there's nothing left to do but listen and to drift. And if you are ready, let our journey begin. A single, powerful message once reached us from the depths of space, and then it fell silent forever. For just 72 seconds, in the summer of 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio, known as the Big Ear, caught a signal unlike anything it had ever recorded before. It was a blast of radio waves, narrow and focused, arriving from a patch of sky in the constellation Sagittarius. The signal was so strong, so clear, that the astronomer who discovered it in the data scribbled a single word in the margin. Wow. That name has stayed with it ever since, because the signal was truly astonishing. It carried all the hallmarks of something artificial. Natural cosmic sources, like pulsars or distant galaxies, tend to broadcast their energy across a wide range of frequencies. But the wow signal was concentrated in a very narrow band, just as a transmission from an intelligent source might be. It seemed to be a deliberate call, a whisper or a shout from across the interstellar void. For decades, we have searched for its source. Astronomers have pointed telescopes back to that same sliver of sky again and again, hoping to hear the message repeat, but there has only ever been silence. We have considered every possible explanation. Could it have been a signal from Earth, bouncing off a piece of space debris? The data does not seem to fit. Could it have been generated by a passing comet? The theory has been proposed, but it does not fully explain the signal's unique strength and frequency. And so, the mystery endures. For a brief moment, it seemed as though humanity was not alone, as though a distant voice had called out in the dark. But the voice never spoke again. Was it a greeting that we were not yet ready to answer? Was it a fluke, a one-in-a-trillion cosmic accident that perfectly mimicked a sign of intelligence? Or was it something else entirely, a phenomenon governed by physics we do not yet understand? We have listened for half a century, but the echo of that single wow has faded into the vast, unending silence of space. The signal remains a ghost in our machines, a single, unexplained word from a galaxy that refuses to tell us more. The universe spoke once, and we still do not know what it said. There is a star in the heavens that flickers as if it is alive, its light dimming in a rhythm that no one can explain. Most stars shine with a steady, predictable light. Some pulse gently, others flare, but they follow patterns that we understand. And then there is Tabby's star, officially known as KC 8462852. This distant sun, more than 1,000 light years away, behaves like no other. When NASA's Kepler Space Telescope stared at it for 4 years, it saw something extraordinary. The star's light would dip suddenly and erratically, sometimes by a little, and sometimes by an astonishing 22%. A dip that large would mean something enormous was passing in front of it, blocking a huge portion of its light. If it were a planet, even one the size of Jupiter, it would only cause a dip of about 1%. But this was something far, far larger. What could it be? Scientists first imagined a vast swarm of comets, a cloud of broken fragments circling the star and casting deep, irregular shadows. This is possible, but the sheer amount of material needed to create such a dip would be immense, far greater than any comet cloud we have ever seen. Another idea is that the star is surrounded by a disk of dust and debris, perhaps from a planetary collision. But the star does not show the infrared glow that such dust clouds typically produce. The evidence does not quite fit. The mystery grew so deep that some astronomers began to consider a more radical idea. They wondered if the shadows could be cast by something artificial, a vast megastructure built by an advanced civilization to harvest the star's energy. This explanation is, of course, a wild speculation, a measure of last resort, when all natural explanations fail, and yet it speaks to the strangeness of what we are seeing. The star's behavior is so unusual that it forces us to imagine possibilities that lie at the very edge of science. We continue to watch Tabby's star. We see its light continue to fade slowly over time, a long, gentle dimming that adds another layer to the puzzle. We are witnessing a star that refuses to follow the rules. It is as if a great, unseen object is dancing around it, a partner in a cosmic ballet whose steps we cannot predict. Is it dust? Is it a shattered planet? Is it something stranger than we can yet imagine? We do not know. The star sends us its strange, flickering light, a message written in shadow, and we still cannot read what it means. It remains a singular enigma in the sky, a heartbeat of light whose rhythm is a complete and beautiful mystery. Our best theories of the universe tell us that empty space should be a raging storm of energy, a violent, chaotic sea. And yet, when we look out into the cosmos, all we find is a profound and gentle calm. This contradiction, this vast, inexplicable silence, is one of the deepest puzzles in all of physics. It is known as the vacuum catastrophe. According to quantum mechanics, what we call a vacuum is not truly empty. It is alive with activity, a place where pairs of virtual particles flicker into and out of existence in an instant. This constant shimmering of reality should, according to the equations, fill space with a tremendous amount of energy. We call this vacuum energy. If our calculations are correct, the energy packed into every cubic centimeter of empty space should be enormous, powerful enough to bend space-time so violently that the universe would have torn itself apart moments after it was born. But that is not what we see. When astronomers measure the expansion of the universe, they find that there is indeed an energy in the vacuum, what we call dark energy, but its value is shockingly small. It is more than 100 orders of magnitude weaker than what our quantum theories predict. The difference between the predicted storm and the observed calm is the largest discrepancy between theory and experiment in the history of science. Why is this? Why is the universe so peaceful when our physics tells us it should be so violent? It is as if we have calculated that a whisper should carry the force of a hurricane, yet the air remains perfectly still. Some physicists believe there may be a hidden principle of nature, some unknown law that cancels out almost all of this energy, leaving behind only the tiny amount we observe. Perhaps there is a symmetry we have not yet discovered, one that forces the raging energies to balance each other into a state of near-perfect tranquility. Others wonder if our understanding of gravity or quantum mechanics is fundamentally flawed at the deepest level. Perhaps space and time themselves behave in ways we cannot yet imagine, ways that diffuse this predicted catastrophe before it can ever occur. But these are only ideas, whispers in the face of an enormous silent problem. The vacuum catastrophe is a mystery about the very fabric of existence. It is about the nature of nothingness, the empty space that separates the stars, the space in the room around you, the space inside every atom. All of it should be a tempest. But it is not. The profound peace of the cosmos is, to a physicist, the most violent mystery of all. Our equations scream chaos, but the universe only whispers calm, and we have absolutely no idea why. Two small spacecraft, our silent messengers to the stars, once found themselves being gently pulled back by an invisible thread. For decades, they drifted away from us, past the orbits of the giant planets and into the cold, dark expanse at the edge of our solar system. And as they went, they carried with them our hopes, our curiosity, and a small golden plaque with a picture of humanity, a greeting card for any intelligence that might one day find them. These were the Pioneer 10 and 11 probes, our first bold steps into the interstellar ocean. And yet, as they sailed farther into that ocean, something strange began to happen. They began to slow down. The deceleration was impossibly small, a force no stronger than the weight of a single snowflake falling on your hand. It was a change in speed of less than a nanometer per second. It was a whisper of a force, a ghostly tug so faint that it took years of careful tracking to confirm it was even real. But it was. Both spacecraft, launched a year apart and traveling in opposite directions, were experiencing the exact same unexplained drag. It was as if the universe itself was gently holding them back, refusing to let them go without a fight. This became known as the Pioneer anomaly. For years, physicists and engineers were haunted by this puzzle. Our understanding of gravity, codified in the elegant equations of Newton and Einstein, is one of the pillars of science. It predicts the motions of planets, stars, and galaxies with breathtaking accuracy. And yet, it could not account for this tiny, persistent force acting on our probes. The universe, it seemed, had a secret it was not sharing. The search for an answer began with the spacecraft themselves. Could there be a tiny, forgotten leak of gas from a microscopic crack in a fuel line, pushing the probes ever so slightly? Engineers went back through the decades-old designs, running simulations, checking every valve and every thruster, but no leak could have produced a force so constant, so steady, for so many years. The numbers simply did not add up. Perhaps it was the gentle pressure of sunlight, or the thin wind of particles blowing from the sun. No, these forces were well understood, and they weakened with distance in a way that did not match the anomaly. The farther the probes went, the stranger the mystery became. Slowly, a more mundane but incredibly complex idea took shape. The Pioneer probes were powered by a small nuclear generator that produced heat. This heat had to radiate away into the cold of space. What if it was not radiating perfectly evenly? What if more heat was shining off the front of the spacecraft, from the back of its large antenna dish, than from the back? This uneven glow of heat, this faint river of infrared photons, would act like a tiny, continuous rocket engine, pushing the spacecraft backward and causing it to slow down. This idea, the thermal recoil force, became the leading explanation. Scientists spent years building intricate computer models, trying to map every surface, every wire, every instrument on the probes, to calculate exactly how their warmth would have radiated into space 30 years ago. And their models came very, very close to explaining the anomaly. It seemed that this faint internal glow might indeed be the ghost that was haunting the data. For many, the case was closed. But for some, a sliver of doubt remains. The models are complex, and they rely on assumptions about materials and conditions from decades ago. Is it possible that the models are not perfect? Is it possible that they have been tuned to find the answer we expect? The thermal explanation is our best and most logical guess, but the anomaly forced us to look into the dark and ask much deeper questions. It forced us to wonder if our theory of gravity was incomplete. It made us ask if there was some unknown interaction with dark matter, or if the very fabric of space-time behaved differently in the cold, empty regions far from the sun. The Pioneer probes are silent now. Their signals have faded, and they drift on through the galaxy, cold and quiet, but they left behind a legacy far greater than their planned mission. For a generation, they presented us with a perfect, beautiful mystery. They carried our image out into the cosmos, and they sent back a question from the void, a question about an impossibly small force that for so long seemed to defy all explanation. The anomaly may have an answer, but the journey it took us on, the way it forced us to question everything we thought we knew, remains a testament to the quiet, persistent mysteries that wait for us at the edge of the map. We live our lives inside a universe that resists change. Push a heavy stone, and you feel it push back. Set a wheel spinning, and it will try to keep spinning forever. This stubbornness, this deep and universal refusal to be hurried or turned from its path, is called inertia. It is perhaps the most fundamental property of matter, so common and so constant that we take it for granted every moment of our lives. And yet, science has no final answer for what it is, or why it exists at all. When Isaac Newton first laid down the laws of motion, he described inertia perfectly. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. It is the men in his famous equation, the measure of an object's mass. But to describe something is not to explain it. Why should reality behave this way? Why does the universe possess this inherent sluggishness? To ask this question is to pull at a thread that unravels our most basic understanding of existence. For a long time, inertia was simply accepted as a brute fact, an intrinsic property of matter. A rock has inertia simply because it is a rock. A star has inertia because it is a star. This idea is simple, but it is not deeply satisfying. In physics, when a property seems to just exist without a cause, it often means we are not looking deeply enough. It is a sign that a greater mystery lies hidden just beneath the surface. A more profound and beautiful idea came from the physicist and philosopher Ernst Mach. He suggested that inertia is not an isolated, internal property of an object at all. Instead, it is a relationship. It is the result of an object's connection to every other piece of matter in the entire universe. According to Mach's principle, when you try to push a stone, the resistance you feel is not just the stone itself. It is the faint, collective gravitational pull of every star, every galaxy, every distant cloud of dust, all whispering to the stone, "Stay where you are, stay with us." In this view, the inertia of a single particle is a conversation with the cosmos. An object's sense of rest is defined by the silent, unmoving backdrop of the distant stars. This idea is deeply poetic, and it had a powerful influence on Albert Einstein as he developed his theory of relativity. And yet, it has remained a tantalizing but unproven concept. It is more of a philosophical guide than a testable physical law. It does not tell us how this influence from distant stars would work, or how it would create the precise effects we measure. The idea that our every effort is a struggle against the weight of the universe is a powerful one, but it remains a ghost in the machine of physics, an unconfirmed and beautiful dream. Today, our best explanation for inertia is tied to an invisible field that permeates all of reality. The discovery of the Higgs boson confirmed the existence of the Higgs field, an energy field that is everywhere, like a kind of cosmic molasses. According to this theory, particles are not born with mass or inertia. They acquire it by interacting with this field. As a particle moves through the Higgs field, it creates a drag, a resistance, and it is this very resistance that we experience as inertia. The more a particle couples with the field, the harder it is to move, and the more mass it has. This is a monumental discovery. It gives us a mechanism for how inertia works, but it does not solve the ultimate mystery. It simply pushes the question back one level. If inertia comes from the Higgs field, then why does the Higgs field exist? Why does it have the particular strength it does? Why does it fill the entire universe with this potential for resistance? We have replaced one fundamental question with another, equally profound one, and so the mystery of inertia remains. The next time you feel its force, the next time you sense the world resisting your push, pause for a moment. That simple, everyday feeling is a direct connection to one of the deepest puzzles in science. You may be feeling the drag of an invisible cosmic field, or you may be feeling the faint combined gravity of 100 billion galaxies across 100 billion light years. Whatever its true source, inertia is the silent, stubborn heartbeat of the physical world. It is the foundation of motion, of mass, of everything we can touch. And why it is there, written into the very fabric of being, is a question we still cannot answer. In the faint, ancient light from the birth of our universe, there is a chilling and unexplained shadow. When we point our radio telescopes to the sky, we can see the afterglow of the Big Bang, a faint wash of microwave light that comes from every direction. This light, the cosmic microwave background, is a picture of the universe when it was just a baby, a mere 380,000 years old, and that picture is astonishingly uniform. It is a map of near-perfect smoothness, a testament to a time when the cosmos was an almost featureless fog of energy. But it is not perfectly smooth. There are tiny ripples in its temperature, fluctuations that are only a few millionths of a degree. These ripples are immensely important. They were the seeds, the tiny variations in density that over billions of years, gravity would pull together to form the first stars, the first galaxies, and eventually, us. Our models of the early universe predict these ripples with incredible accuracy. They should be scattered randomly across the sky, like faint patterns on a perfectly marbled stone. And for the most part, they are. But there is one place on this map that defies all expectation. In the direction of the constellation Eridanus, there's a vast patch of the sky that is unnaturally, mysteriously cold. It is known as the cosmic cold spot. It is not just another ripple. It is enormous, spanning more than 1 billion light years of space, and its temperature is significantly lower than the statistical models say it should be. It is a vast, cold bruise on the face of the infant universe. What could have caused such a thing? The simplest and least exciting explanation is that it is nothing at all. It could just be a statistical fluke, an incredibly unlikely, but still possible random alignment of smaller, colder patches that happen to create the illusion of one giant spot. In any random data set, strange patterns will eventually emerge. Perhaps we are just staring at the cosmic equivalent of seeing a face in the clouds. But the more we study the cold spot, the less likely a simple coincidence seems. It is so large and so cold that it pushes the boundaries of what chance can be expected to produce. It is an outlier so extreme that it invites us to search for a deeper, stranger cause. One of the leading ideas is that the cold spot is not a feature of the early universe at all, but rather an illusion created by something in the foreground. If there were a colossal void of space between us and that distant patch of sky, an almost unimaginable expanse of emptiness known as a supervoid, it could create the effect we see. Light from the cosmic microwave background that travels through such a void would lose energy, causing it to appear colder to our telescopes. Astronomers have searched for this void, and they have indeed found a region in that direction with fewer galaxies than average. But it is not clear if this void is large enough or empty enough to account for the entire temperature drop. The void may be real, but it seems to be only part of the answer. The chill of the cold spot seems deeper than the emptiness we can see. This leaves us with more exotic, more speculative possibilities. Perhaps the cold spot is a real scar from the universe's earliest moments, a relic of an ancient phase transition, like a crystal defect in the fabric of space-time itself. It could be a cosmic texture, a kind of tangled knot of energy left over from an era we can only guess at. Or perhaps, and this is the most mind-bending idea of all, the cold spot is a message from beyond our own reality. Some theories of the multiverse propose that our universe is just one bubble floating in a vast cosmic foam of other universes. If this is true, it is possible that long ago our universe had a gentle collision with another. The cold spot, in this view, could be the lingering bruise from that encounter, the faint, cold shadow of another reality pressing against our own. This is an idea at the very edge of physics, perhaps forever untestable. It is a dream, a speculation born from a mystery so deep that it forces us to reconsider the very nature of our existence. And so, we are left to wonder. We look at this beautiful ancient map of our origins, and we see a single, vast feature that should not be there. It is a silent, cold anomaly in the cradle of the cosmos. Is it a trick of the light? Is it the shadow of a great emptiness? Or is it a whisper from a reality beyond our own? For now, no one knows. The cold spot remains, a chilling and profound puzzle written into the first light of time. There is a book in a library at Yale University that no one in the world can read. It is not written in Latin or ancient Greek or any of the lost languages of history. Its elegant script flows across pages of weathered vellum, accompanied by intricate drawings of plants that do not grow on Earth, star charts of constellations that do not appear in our sky, and diagrams of biological processes that belong to no known form of life. For more than a century, the world's greatest cryptographers, linguists, and historians have stared at its pages, and all of them have failed to decipher a single word. This is the Voynich manuscript, a perfect, impenetrable mystery bound in leather and ink. The manuscript first appeared in the historical record in the early 17th century, in the hands of an alchemist in Prague. From there, it passed through the collections of emperors and scholars, a beautiful and baffling object that whispered of hidden knowledge. But its true age is much greater. Carbon dating has shown that its pages were made in the early 15th century, placing it in the heart of the medieval world, a time of secret societies, arcane philosophies, and the dawn of modern science. But who wrote it, and for what purpose, remains completely unknown. The mystery begins with the text itself. The script is composed of about 24 unique characters, some resembling Latin letters, others unlike anything seen before. They are written with a confident, flowing hand, as if the author knew exactly what they were saying. The words follow clear statistical patterns, similar to those found in real languages. Certain letters appear more frequently. Some characters tend to start words while others end them, and some pairs of letters appear together far more often than others. It has all the texture and rhythm of a genuine language, and yet it corresponds to nothing. Every attempt to map it onto a known language, or to crack it as a code, has ended in failure. Then there are the illustrations, which only deepen the puzzle. The manuscript is divided into sections, each with its own strange theme. The first is botanical, filled with drawings of fantastical plants. Some have the roots of one species, the leaves of another, and the flowers of a third, all rendered with the careful detail of a scientific observer documenting an alien world. The next section is astronomical, with circular diagrams of suns, moons, and stars, arranged in patterns that do not match our zodiac. There are charts that seem to track the passage of celestial bodies, but their paths are unfamiliar, their meaning lost. Perhaps the strangest section is the one that appears to be biological. It is filled with drawings of small, naked figures, mostly female, bathing in pools and streams, connected by an elaborate network of tubes and channels. They seem to be part of some complex organic system, a kind of alchemical or physiological process that has no parallel in human biology. Are these symbolic representations of the soul's journey? Are they diagrams for a forgotten medical treatment? Or are they something else entirely? The images are as beautiful as they are bizarre, and they offer no clear clues. What could this book possibly be? One theory is that it is an elaborate hoax, a meaningless collection of gibberish and fantasy created to fool a wealthy patron. This is possible. The medieval world was full of tricksters, but creating a document of this length and complexity with such consistent linguistic patterns would be a monumental undertaking. It seems like far too much effort for a simple fraud. The author's hand never falters. The language never breaks down into true randomness. It feels too real to be a lie. Another possibility is that it is a lost or invented language, a unique tongue used to record secret knowledge, perhaps by a persecuted religious sect or a society of alchemists. If so, the author took their secrets to the grave, leaving behind a book whose key is forever lost. Or perhaps it is a known language, but written in a code so sophisticated, so brilliantly conceived, that it has resisted the efforts of every code breaker, including those who cracked the most complex ciphers of World War II. And so, the Voynich manuscript sits in its quiet, climate-controlled vault, a monument to the unknown. It is a book full of words that say nothing, and pictures that explain nothing. It is a perfect enigma, a piece of a lost world that has drifted into our own, its purpose and meaning erased by time. We can touch its pages, we can analyze its ink, we can stare at its strange looping script, but we cannot enter its world. It remains a locked room in the house of history, and we are still standing at the door, wondering what secrets lie inside. In the bone-dry coastal desert of southern Peru, the earth itself has been turned into a canvas. Scratched into the dark, stony ground are hundreds of gigantic drawings, lines and shapes so vast that they are almost invisible from the ground. Only from the air, from the perspective of a soaring bird or a silent god, do they resolve into a breathtaking gallery of art. There are straight lines that stretch for miles, perfect geometric shapes like triangles and trapezoids, and enormous, stylized figures of animals. A hummingbird with a wingspan of 300 feet, a spider with perfect anatomical detail, a monkey with a curling spiral tail. These are the Nazca lines, a 2,000-year-old mystery etched into the landscape. They were created by the Nazca people, a culture that flourished in this region long before the rise of the Inca Empire. Using a simple but effective technique, they removed the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles that cover the desert floor, exposing the lighter-colored earth beneath. The lines are not deep, only a few inches at most. In most climates, they would have been erased by wind and rain in a matter of years. But here, in one of the driest places on Earth, they have been preserved in a state of near-perfect stillness for centuries. The true mystery of the Nazca lines is not how they were made, but why. What purpose could these enormous geoglyphs possibly have served? To create them required a massive, coordinated effort, a deep understanding of geometry and scale, and a vision that could only be fully appreciated from high above. And yet, the Nazca people had no means of flight. They built these masterpieces for an audience that could not exist. One of the most enduring theories is that the lines were a form of worship, a way of communicating with deities in the sky. The figures of animals, each one rendered with a single, continuous line, may have been offerings or prayers, giant symbols meant to be seen by the gods who controlled the weather and the harvests. In a land where water was the most precious resource, perhaps these lines were part of elaborate rituals to call for rain, the straight lines pointing to sacred mountains where the weather was born. Another idea is that they form a giant astronomical calendar, a map of the heavens laid out on the earth. Some researchers have suggested that the lines align with the rising and setting of the sun, the moon, and important stars on significant dates, like the solstices. In this view, the desert floor was a celestial observatory, a tool for tracking time and predicting the changing of the seasons. While some alignments have been found, many of the lines seem to point in random directions, and the theory cannot account for the strange, beautiful figures of the animals. The star map, if it is one, is written in a language we have not yet learned to read. Other, more fringe theories have imagined the lines as runways for ancient alien spacecraft, messages left by visitors from another world. While these ideas capture the imagination, they lack any real evidence. The truth is likely more human, and perhaps even more mysterious. The lines may be connected to shamanic rituals, spiritual journeys made by tracing the paths on the ground. They could be markers for underground water sources, a vital map for survival in a harsh landscape, or they may be something else entirely, the expression of a belief system so different from our own that we can no longer grasp its logic. And so, the figures lie silent in the desert, waiting. The hummingbird hovers, its wings forever beating. The spider scuttles across the sand. The monkey stares up at a sky that has changed little since the day it was drawn. They are monuments to a lost way of seeing the world, a testament to a people who had a reason to speak to the sky. They left behind a question written in stone and sand, a message on a scale so grand that it continues to humble and mystify us. We can fly over them. We can map them with drones. We can study them with satellites, but we still do not know why a civilization would choose to create a work of art that they themselves could never truly see. Long before the pyramids were built, before the first cities rose in Mesopotamia, and before the invention of writing or the wheel, a group of hunter-gatherers in what is now modern Turkey accomplished the impossible. On a dry, rounded hilltop, they built a temple. But this was no simple shrine of wood and mud. It was a vast and complex series of stone circles, a monumental sanctuary of carved pillars and intricate artistry that is older than any other civilization on Earth. This place is called Göbekli Tepe, and its existence has shattered our understanding of the ancient world. For decades, we believed that we understood the dawn of civilization. First came agriculture. We thought humans settled down, learned to farm, and created a surplus of food. This stability allowed for the growth of villages, then towns, then cities, and only then, with a settled population and organized labor, did monumental architecture and complex religion become possible. Göbekli Tepe turns this entire story on its head. It was built around 11,500 years ago, thousands of years before the invention of farming. The people who built it were not farmers. They were nomads, living in a world without pottery, without metal tools, and without a permanent home. And yet, what they created is astonishing. The site consists of multiple circular enclosures, each one ringed by massive T-shaped limestone pillars. These pillars are enormous, some standing as tall as 18 feet and weighing up to 16 tons. They were quarried from a nearby hillside and moved somehow by human hands alone. And they are not blank stones. They are covered in a rich tapestry of carvings, a gallery of animals from a world that has long since vanished. There are reliefs of snakes, foxes, wild boars, gazelles, and cranes, all depicted with a startling, stylized grace. These are not simple doodles. They are the work of skilled artists, the expression of a deep and complex symbolic world. The mystery of Göbekli Tepe is profound. How did a society of hunter-gatherers, with no beasts of burden and no advanced technology, manage to organize the labor required to build such a place? To quarry, move, and erect these giant pillars would have required hundreds of people working together for a common purpose over a very long period of time. This level of organization was thought to be impossible for a pre-agricultural society. It suggests a level of social and religious complexity that we never dreamed existed in that distant era. And what was that purpose? Why did these ancient people pour so much effort into this hilltop sanctuary? It was not a settlement. There are no signs of houses, no hearths for cooking, no evidence that anyone ever lived there. It seems to have been a place of pure ritual, a sacred meeting point, perhaps the world's first cathedral. The T-shaped pillars may represent stylized human figures, their arms carved along their sides, perhaps representing gods or revered ancestors. The animals carved upon them may have been spirit guardians or figures from a lost mythology that was shared by the scattered tribes who gathered there. Perhaps the most astonishing discovery is that Göbekli Tepe did not simply fall into ruin. After centuries of use, its creators deliberately buried it. They carefully and intentionally filled the entire site with dirt and debris, preserving it perfectly beneath a man-made hill. Why would a culture go to such lengths to entomb its most sacred creation? Was it a ritual act of closure? Were they hiding it from a changing world? Or was the act of burying it just as important as the act of building it? We do not know. Göbekli Tepe suggests that the story of civilization may need to be rewritten. It hints that it was not agriculture that led to settlement and religion, but perhaps the other way around. Perhaps the intense, shared belief that drove the construction of this temple was the very thing that forced humanity to innovate. Perhaps the need to feed the hundreds of workers who gathered here was the spark that led, eventually, to the domestication of plants and animals. It may be that faith, not food, was the true catalyst for civilization. Today, only a small fraction of the site has been excavated. More circles, more pillars, more secrets almost certainly lie buried beneath the hill. But what we have already found is enough to change everything. We are looking at the work of a people who should not have been able to do what they did. They were a lost chapter in the human story, a civilization of hunter-gatherers who built for the gods before they had even built houses for themselves. Göbekli Tepe is a silent testament to their faith, a question in stone that challenges the very foundation of our past. In the heart of the Siberian wilderness, in the summer of 1908, the sky caught fire. Witnesses dozens of miles away described a column of brilliant blue light, brighter than the sun, moving across the heavens. Then came a sound, a deafening series of explosions that shattered windows and knocked people off their feet. A pillar of fire rose miles into the sky, followed by a searing thermal wave that scorched the forest, and a shock wave so powerful it circled the earth twice. In a matter of moments, an event with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs had flattened more than 80 million trees across an area the size of a major city. And then there was silence. This was the Tunguska event, the largest impact event in recorded history, and it left behind the most perplexing mystery of all. There was no crater. When the first scientific expedition finally reached the remote site, nearly 2 decades later, they found a scene of almost unimaginable devastation. The forest had been laid out in a radial pattern, the trees all pointing away from a central point, their branches stripped, their trunks scorched. It was the perfect picture of a massive explosion. But at the epicenter, where a crater miles wide should have been, there was nothing. The ground was not broken. There were no fragments of a meteorite, no shattered rock, no sign that anything from space had ever struck the earth. It was as if a ghost had descended from the sky, unleashing its fury without ever touching the ground. What could have caused such a thing? The leading and most logical explanation is that the object was not a solid iron meteorite, but a fragile piece of a comet or a stony asteroid. It did not strike the Earth, but instead disintegrated in a colossal airburst several miles up in the atmosphere. The intense heat and pressure of its entry would have caused it to explode with all the force of a hydrogen bomb, sending a devastating shockwave down to the surface. This would explain the flattened forest and the lack of an impact crater. It is a neat and tidy explanation, and it is almost certainly close to the truth. And yet, for a century, it has been haunted by nagging questions. If it was a comet, composed mostly of ice, it should have left a distinct chemical signature in the soil and the peat bogs of the region, perhaps a spike in elements like iridium. Early searches found very little. If it was a stony asteroid, it should have scattered tiny fragments across the landscape. For decades, none were found. The silence from the ground was as puzzling as the violence from the sky. The event was so clean, so efficient in its own destruction, that it seemed to have erased itself from existence. This lack of evidence opened the door to more imaginative, more exotic theories. Some wondered if a tiny black hole had passed through the Earth, its gravitational force creating the shock wave. Others speculated about an explosion of a vast underground pocket of natural gas, or an encounter with a piece of antimatter that annihilated on contact with our atmosphere. These ideas have faded over time, but they speak to the depth of the mystery, to the way it forced us to imagine forces of nature that lie beyond our normal experience. In recent years, tiny glassy spherules have been found in the soil, microscopic droplets of molten rock containing minerals that hint at an extraterrestrial origin. These may be the long-sought fragments of the object, the final pieces of the puzzle, but the story they tell is still not entirely clear. The mystery of Tunguska is not just about what happened, but about the scale of it, about the sheer, untamed power that the universe can unleash without warning. It is a reminder that the space above our heads is not empty, but filled with silent wanderers, ancient remnants from the birth of the solar system. One of them paid our planet a visit in 1908. It left behind a scar on the land and a deeper scar on our understanding. The trees have regrown, but the sky above them still holds the memory of a fire it cannot explain. In the year 1900, a group of sponge divers, taking shelter from a storm near the Greek island of Antikythera, discovered an ancient Roman shipwreck lying on the seabed for 2 millennia. Among the treasures they brought to the surface, marble statues, elegant pottery, and gold jewelry, was a single, unremarkable lump of corroded bronze. It was about the size of a large book, and it was dismissed as a curiosity, perhaps a piece of a broken statue or a small table. For months, it sat unnoticed in a museum in Athens, and then one day, it cracked open, revealing something that should not have existed. Inside was a breathtakingly complex system of interlocking gears, a delicate and intricate assembly of wheels within wheels, a machine from a lost world. This was the Antikythera mechanism. A scientist began to study this strange object, using X-rays and advanced imaging to peer through its layers of corrosion. A stunning picture emerged. This was not a simple clock or a decorative toy. This was an astronomical computer of astonishing sophistication. Its more than 30 bronze gears were arranged in a complex dance designed to model the motions of the heavens. With the turn of a single crank, the mechanism could predict the position of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks. It could show the phase of the moon. It could forecast solar and lunar eclipses with startling accuracy, even accounting for the subtle variations in the moon's orbit. It was a portable, mechanical cosmos, a clockwork universe that fit inside a wooden box. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism is a profound historical paradox. Nothing else like it has ever been found from the ancient world. The level of mechanical engineering and theoretical astronomy required to build it is something we did not think was possible until the great cathedral clocks of 14th century Europe, more than 1500 years later. The machine contains gears with tiny triangular teeth arranged in complex differential systems that were thought to be an invention of the modern age. It is an anachronism, a ghost of a future that arrived 2,000 years too soon. The mystery is twofold. First, how did the ancient Greeks, with their sandals and their scrolls, develop the knowledge to create such a device? It suggests a tradition of precision mechanics that has been completely lost to history. There are no other surviving examples, no texts that describe how to build such a thing. Was it the work of a single forgotten genius, an ancient Leonardo da Vinci, whose other inventions have all turned to dust? Or was it the product of a school of thought, a community of philosopher-engineers whose workshops and libraries were destroyed by the slow, grinding passage of time? The machine is a single brilliant data point in an otherwise empty graph. It hints at a level of technological achievement that we are only just beginning to appreciate. But the second, deeper mystery is perhaps even more haunting. If this technology existed in the 2nd century BC, where did it go? Why did this incredible knowledge vanish? Why did the world have to wait another millennium and a half for the clockwork revolution to begin again? The Antikythera mechanism is not just a testament to a lost genius. It is a monument to a lost path of history. It suggests that the classical world was on the cusp of a mechanical age, a future that for some reason never came to be. Did the knowledge seem too esoteric, too specialized to be preserved? Was it lost in the fire of a burning library? Or did it simply fade away as the Roman Empire declined and the world entered a new era? We can now build digital reconstructions of the mechanism. We can watch its gears turn on a computer screen and marvel at its elegance. We can read some of the faint inscriptions on its dials, a user's manual written in ancient Greek. But we cannot answer the most important questions. We cannot know the name of its creator. We cannot know the full scope of the knowledge that it represents, and we cannot know why humanity had to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, after having already built a universe out of them. The Antikythera mechanism was pulled from the silent depths of the sea, and it brought with it the silent, ghostly echo of a future that was and then was not. In the late 16th century, in the untamed wilderness of the New World, an entire English colony of more than 100 men, women, and children vanished without a trace. They were the first attempt by England to build a permanent settlement in North America, a small flicker of hope on the shores of Roanoke Island, in what is now North Carolina. They built small houses, they began to clear the land, and the first English child born in the Americas, Virginia Dare, took her first breaths there. And then they were gone, swallowed by the silence of the forest, leaving behind a mystery that has haunted the American imagination for over 400 years. The story of the lost colony is a tragedy of timing. The colony's governor, John White, sailed back to England in 1587 to gather more supplies. He left behind his daughter, his granddaughter Virginia, and the rest of the settlers, promising to return within a year. But his return was delayed by a war with Spain. The Great Spanish Armada sailed against England, and every available ship was conscripted for the war effort. For 3 long years, John White was trapped in England, his heart aching with worry for the family and the colony he had left across the ocean. When he was finally able to return in 1590, he found the settlement completely deserted. The houses had been dismantled, not burned or destroyed, but carefully taken down. The heavy cannons and other equipment were gone. The entire area had been enclosed by a defensive palisade of high wooden posts, suggesting they had feared an attack. But there were no bodies. There were no skeletons. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood in the soil, no evidence of a battle or a massacre. It was as if the colonists had simply packed up their belongings and walked away, and they left behind only 2 clues. On one of the palisade posts, a single word had been carved into the wood, Surotoan. On another tree, the letters Suro were found. Surotoan was the name of a nearby island, now called Hatteras Island, and it was the home of a friendly Native American tribe. Before John White had left, he had arranged a signal with the colonists. If they had to move, they were to carve their destination into a tree. If they were in distress, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name. There was no cross. The message seemed clear. The colonists had moved to Croatoan Island, and yet the mystery was only beginning. Storms and rough seas prevented White from making the short journey to the island to search for them. Heartbroken, he was forced to sail back to England, and he would never again have the funds to mount another rescue mission. He would die years later, never knowing the fate of his family. Other explorers and settlers who came to the region in the following years searched for the lost colonists, but they found nothing definitive. There were tantalizing rumors, stories from Native American tribes about people with light hair and gray eyes living among them, stories of a tribe that knew how to read and write in a book. Some modern archaeological evidence on Hatteras Island suggests that a small group of the colonists may indeed have assimilated with the Croatoan people, living out their lives in a new culture. This is the most hopeful and the most likely explanation. But it does not explain everything. Why would over 100 people leave so little trace? If they merged with a local tribe, why were their English artifacts, their tools, their pottery, their very bones, never found in any significant number? Why did they abandon their settlement so completely? Did they all go to Croatoan? Or did the group split up, some going inland, some dying of disease, some meeting a darker fate? And why did they leave only a single cryptic word, a destination without a story, a signpost without an explanation? The Roanoke colony is a ghost story written into the first pages of American history. It is a story about a small group of people who stepped off a ship into a vast, unknown continent and were simply absorbed by it, leaving behind only a question mark. They became a whisper in the woods, a cautionary tale told around colonial fires. The word Croatoan has echoed through the centuries, a symbol of all that is lost and all that can never be known. It is not just the name of a place. It is the name of a mystery, the final, silent word from a community that walked into the heart of a new world and never returned. There was a moment, more than 500 million years ago, when the quiet, slow story of life on Earth suddenly exploded into a riot of creativity. For 3 billion years, life had been a simple affair. A world dominated by single-celled organisms, microbial mats, and strange soft-bodied creatures that left behind only faint impressions in the ancient mud. The evolutionary clock ticked at a glacial pace, and then, in a geological instant, everything changed. In a period of just a few tens of millions of years, a mere blink of an eye, in the vast expanse of Earth's history, the planet's oceans burst forth with an astonishing diversity of new and complex animals. This was the Cambrian explosion, a biological Big Bang whose cause remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles in the story of life. It was as if a divine artist, bored with a minimalist canvas, had suddenly decided to paint a masterpiece. Out of the quiet, murky depths came the ancestors of almost every major animal group that exists today. The first creatures with skeletons and shells appeared, their hard bodies leaving a rich and detailed fossil record for the first time. The seas filled with trilobites, those armored insect-like scavengers that would dominate the seafloor for 250 million years. There were strange, swimming predators with grasping claws and compound eyes. There were shelled mollusks, spiny echinoderms, and the very first chordates, the distant worm-like relatives that would eventually give rise to fish and amphibians and reptiles and birds and us. It was a frenzy of creation, a sudden and dramatic flowering of the animal kingdom. The mystery of the Cambrian explosion is simple. Why then, and why so fast? For billions of years, life had been content with simplicity. The basic genetic toolkit for building complex bodies had been evolving slowly in the background, but something held it back, and then a switch was flipped. A dam broke. What was the catalyst for this incredible burst of evolutionary innovation? Scientists have spent their careers searching for the trigger, and they have found many possible clues, but no single definitive answer. One idea is that the world itself changed. Perhaps, after billions of years, the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere and the oceans finally reached a critical threshold. Complex, active animals, need a lot of oxygen to fuel their metabolisms. Before the Cambrian, there may simply not have been enough to support them. A gradual rise in oxygen, produced by countless generations of photosynthetic microbes, could have opened the door for larger, more energetic forms of life to finally emerge. The environment in this view was the silent gatekeeper, and it had finally unlocked the gate. Another possibility is that the innovation was ecological, not environmental. Perhaps the evolution of the first true predators was the spark that lit the fuse. In a world of soft-bodied grazers, the appearance of an animal that could hunt and kill would have set off an evolutionary arms race. Suddenly, there was a massive pressure to evolve new defenses: hard shells, sharp spines, the ability to burrow into the seafloor. And in response, predators would have evolved better eyes, stronger claws, faster bodies. This back and forth, this deadly dance between hunter and hunted, could have driven the rapid diversification we see in the fossil record. Life, in a sense, was forced into complexity by its own internal conflicts. Or perhaps the answer lies deeper, in the very structure of life's code. Geneticists have suggested that the genes responsible for building animal bodies, the so-called Hox genes, may have reached a certain level of complexity and flexibility right before the Cambrian. It may be that the genetic instruction manual for building a trilobite or a mollusk had finally been written, and all that was needed was the right environmental opportunity for those instructions to be put to use. The explosion in this view was not a sudden invention of new forms, but the rapid deployment of a genetic potential that had been slowly building for eons. It is likely that all of these factors played a role. A perfect storm of rising oxygen, new ecological pressures, and genetic readiness may have combined to create the conditions for this unique event. But the sheer speed and scale of it remain difficult to explain. The fossil record is a story of slow, gradual change, punctuated by these rare and bewildering moments of explosive creation. The Cambrian explosion was the most spectacular of them all. It was the moment the world came alive in a way it never had before. It was the birth of the animal world, as we know it, the dawn of our own distant ancestry, and the true cause of that dawn, the spark that ignited the fuse of biological diversity, is a mystery that is still buried deep in the ancient rock, waiting to be fully understood. In the intricate, beautiful machinery of life, there is no decision more consequential or more puzzling than the choice to create a partner. For billions of years, life had a simpler, more efficient way of making copies of itself. A single cell would divide, a single organism would bud or clone, creating a perfect, identical replica. This is asexual reproduction. It is fast, it is reliable, and it requires no wasted energy on the messy, complicated business of finding a mate. And yet, for reasons that continue to spark debate among biologists, much of the living world, from the smallest insects to the largest whales, abandoned this simple path and embraced a far stranger and more costly strategy: sex. The mystery of sexual reproduction is one of the deepest questions in evolutionary biology. From a purely mathematical perspective, it seems like a terrible idea. An asexual organism passes on all of its genes to its offspring. It is a perfect engine of inheritance. A sexual organism, on the other hand, passes on only half of its genes. The other half comes from its partner. This means that, for every generation, half of its genetic legacy is lost. This is the cost of males, a fundamental evolutionary paradox. Why would any organism willingly dilute its own genetic contribution by half? There must be a truly enormous benefit to sex to overcome this fundamental disadvantage. And for decades, scientists have been searching for that benefit. The leading and most widely accepted theory is that sex is all about creating variety. An asexual creature produces clones. If a deadly new disease or a sudden change in the environment comes along, the entire population might be wiped out because they are all equally vulnerable. But sex shuffles the genetic deck with every generation. It takes the genes from two different individuals and combines them in a novel way, creating offspring that are unique. This genetic diversity is like an insurance policy for the species. In a constantly changing world, filled with an ever-evolving army of parasites and pathogens, sex creates a moving target, a population of individuals with different strengths and weaknesses, making it much harder for any single threat to deliver a knockout blow. This is the Red Queen hypothesis, named after the character in Through the Looking Glass, who has to run as fast as she can just to stay in the same place. Sex, in this view, is the engine of adaptation, the tool that allows life to keep running in its endless race against extinction. This is a powerful and elegant explanation, and it is almost certainly a large part of the answer, but it may not be the whole story. Some scientists argue that the true benefit of sex is not about creating good gene combinations, but about getting rid of bad ones. In an asexual lineage, a harmful mutation will be passed down to every single descendant, like a permanent, unerasable flaw. Over time, these mutations can accumulate, slowly weighing down the entire population. But sex provides a way to clean the slate. The shuffling of genes means that some offspring might inherit a clean set of genes without the harmful mutations of their parents. Sex, in this sense, is a genetic repair mechanism, a way of purging the genome of its inevitable errors. And yet, other, stranger possibilities remain. Perhaps sex is not just about the genes themselves, but about the very structure of the cell. Perhaps the act of merging two cells provides a way to repair and rejuvenate the cellular machinery that has been damaged over time. The questions are endless, and the debate is far from settled. We see the results of sexual reproduction all around us, in the stunning diversity of the natural world, in the peacock's tail, in the lion's mane, in the complex rituals of courtship that fill the animal kingdom. These are the beautiful, elaborate consequences of a decision that life made hundreds of millions of years ago. It was a decision to abandon the safety of solitude and embrace the risk and the reward of partnership. It was a choice to trade the efficiency of the clone for the creative chaos of the combination. We are all the children of that choice. Our very existence is a testament to the mysterious power of sex. But the ultimate reason why life made this fateful turn, why it chose the complicated path of two over the simple path of one, remains one of the most fundamental and profound questions about why we are the way we are. There is a strange and deeply human reflex that seems to serve no obvious purpose, yet it connects us all in a moment of shared, involuntary surrender. It begins with a slow, deep inhalation of air. The jaw drops, the eyes close, and for a few seconds, the body is given over to a powerful, stretching release. This is the yawn. We do it when we are tired. We do it when we are bored. We do it when we wake up in the morning. And strangest of all, we do it when we see someone else do it. It is a ghost of a behavior, a piece of ancient biology whose true meaning remains a complete and beautiful mystery. For centuries, the simplest explanation seemed the most logical. We yawn. It was thought because our bodies need more oxygen. When we are tired or in a stuffy room, our breathing becomes shallow and carbon dioxide builds up in our blood. A yawn, in this view, is a powerful gulp of air, a way to flood the lungs with fresh oxygen and restore the balance. It is a neat and intuitive idea, but when scientists have tested it, it has consistently failed, giving people extra oxygen does not stop them from yawning, and reducing the carbon dioxide in their blood does not stop them either. The yawn, it seems, has nothing to do with breathing. So what could it be? A more modern and intriguing theory suggests that the yawn is not for the lungs, but for the brain. It may be a natural cooling mechanism. The brain is like a powerful computer, and it works best when it is kept at an optimal temperature. When we are tired or overstimulated, the brain can begin to heat up. A deep inhalation of cool air, the theory goes, can help to lower the temperature of the blood flowing to the brain, providing a moment of refreshing clarity. This idea is supported by studies showing that we yawn more in cooler temperatures, and that holding a cold pack to your forehead can reduce the urge to yawn. The yawn, in this sense, is a biological thermostat, a gentle reset for an overheating mind. This is a compelling explanation, but it does not account for the most mysterious aspect of the yawn, its incredible contagiousness. Why should seeing, hearing, or even reading about a yawn make you want to do it yourself? More than half of all adults will yawn after watching a video of someone else yawning. This is not a simple reflex. It is a deep and complex social phenomenon, a form of unconscious communication that has been observed not only in humans, but also in chimpanzees, wolves, and other highly social animals. The contagiousness of the yawn seems to be tied to our capacity for empathy. The parts of the brain that are activated by a contagious yawn are the same parts involved in social bonding and understanding the mental states of others. Children do not typically catch a yawn until they are around 4 or 5 years old, the same age that they begin to develop more advanced social skills. And people who score higher on tests of empathy are more likely to be susceptible to contagious yawning. But what are we communicating? Why would empathy evolve to express itself in this particular peculiar way? Perhaps it is a relic from our deep evolutionary past, a way for a social group to synchronize their states of alertness. If one member of a tribe felt a wave of drowsiness, a shared yawn could subtly signal to the others that it was time to rest, or that the group's vigilance was low. It could be a silent, ancient signal that binds a group together, a way of saying, "I feel what you feel. I am tired too." But this is still just a theory. The true purpose of the yawn remains elusive, hidden somewhere in the complex wiring of our brains and the deep history of our social lives. It is a behavior that we all share, a universal human experience that transcends culture and language. And yet, none of us can say for sure why we do it. It is a small, everyday mystery, a quiet and involuntary reminder that our bodies still keep secrets from our minds. The yawn comes and goes, unbidden and unexplained, a perfect fleeting enigma in a breath of air. Deep within our bodies, there is a hidden conversation taking place, a constant and silent dialogue between our conscious mind and a vast alien world that lives inside us. This world is our gut, an ecosystem teeming with 100 trillion microorganisms, a diverse and complex community of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that outnumber our own cells 10 to 1. For most of medical history, we thought of this microbiome as a simple passive passenger, a collection of microbes that helped us digest our food and little more. But we are now beginning to realize that this inner world is not a passenger at all. It is a co-pilot. It is our second brain, and it is whispering to our first brain in a language we are only just beginning to decipher. This intimate connection, this invisible bridge between our digestive system and our brain, is known as the gut-brain axis. It is not just a vague, metaphorical link. It is a real and physical communication network, a superhighway of nerves, hormones, and chemical signals that flows in both directions. The brain can clearly influence the gut. The simple feeling of anxiety can tie our stomach in knots, but the reverse. The idea that the gut can influence the brain is a revelation that is transforming our understanding of health, mood, and even who we are. The mystery lies in the profound and subtle ways this influence is exerted. The microbes in our gut are not just digesting fiber, they are busy chemical factories, producing hundreds of different neuroactive compounds. They manufacture neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, the very same molecules that our brain uses to regulate mood, happiness, and motivation. In fact, more than 90% of the body's serotonin, the feel-good chemical, is produced not in the brain, but in the gut by the bacteria that live there. It is a stunning thought. The chemical balance that shapes our emotional landscape may be managed in large part by the microscopic life in our intestines. How does this work? How can these tiny organisms reach across the barrier of our bodies to touch our minds? One pathway is the vagus nerve, a long, wandering nerve that connects the brainstem directly to the major organs, including the gut. It is a direct, physical line of communication. Studies in animals have shown that signals from gut bacteria can travel up this nerve to influence brain function and behavior. In a very real sense, we may be feeling the state of our microbiome through this ancient neural pathway. But there are other more subtle channels of communication. The gut microbiome plays a crucial role in regulating our immune system. It teaches our immune cells what to attack and what to ignore, and our immune system, in turn, is in constant communication with our brain. The low-grade, chronic inflammation that is linked to conditions like depression may, in some cases, have its origins in an unhealthy, imbalanced gut. The whispers from our microbes can become a roar of inflammation that echoes through our entire body, right up to our brain. This new science is raising profound questions that were once unthinkable. Could the composition of our gut bacteria influence our personality, making us more anxious or more adventurous? Could it play a role in complex neurological disorders like autism or Parkinson's disease? The early evidence is tantalizing, and in some cases, startling. Experiments have shown that transplanting the microbiome from an anxious mouse into a calm mouse can make the calm mouse anxious. We are not just our genes, and we are not just our experiences. We are, in a very real way, a walking, talking ecosystem, a superorganism whose thoughts and feelings are a collaboration between our own cells and the trillions of tiny partners we carry with us. And yet, this is a science in its infancy. We have identified many of the players, but we do not yet understand the rules of the game. We do not know what a truly healthy microbiome looks like, or how to reliably change it for the better. We are like astronomers who have just discovered a new galaxy filled with a dizzying number of stars, but we have not yet begun to map their constellations or understand their gravitational dance. The gut is a dark continent within us, and we have only just landed on its shores. It is a reminder that the mysteries of the universe are not all in the distant stars. Some of the deepest, most complex, and most personal mysteries are folded into the very fabric of our own bodies, in the silent, teeming world within. The world we inhabit is a world of symmetries. A snowflake unfolds in a pattern of perfect six-fold grace. A butterfly's wings are a mirror image of delicate color. And yet, when we look at ourselves, at the very heart of our own being, we find a profound and mysterious break in this symmetry. Most of us, for reasons that science cannot fully explain, have chosen a side. We reach for a cup with our right hand. We write our name with our right hand. We throw a ball with our right hand. And a small, persistent minority does the opposite. This is handedness, the simple, everyday fact of being right-handed or left-handed, and its origin is one of the most intimate and unsolved puzzles of human biology. This is not a trivial preference. It is a deep and fundamental aspect of our neurobiology, a physical manifestation of the way our brains are organized. The human brain is divided into two hemispheres, a left and a right, and for most people, these two halves are not identical in their function. The left hemisphere typically specializes in language and logical sequential tasks. The right hemisphere excels at spatial awareness, emotional processing, and recognizing faces. And because most of the brain's motor pathways cross over, the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left. Our right-handedness, in most cases, is a direct consequence of the dominance of our left brain. But this only pushes the mystery back one step. Why is the brain lateralized in this way? Why should one hemisphere, for most of us, take the lead in controlling our most precise and important actions? And why is it almost always the left hemisphere that does so? About 90% of humans are right-handed, a ratio that has remained remarkably stable across all cultures and throughout all of human history. Cave paintings from thousands of years ago show the same proportion of right-handed tool users. This is not a cultural invention. It is a deep biological constant, a signature of our species. The search for an answer has led scientists deep into our genetic code. Handedness clearly runs in families. Left-handed parents are more likely to have left-handed children. But the genetics are not simple. There is no single left-handed gene. Instead, dozens of genes seem to play a small role, each one nudging the developing brain in a certain direction. And even these genes are not deterministic. Identical twins who share the exact same DNA do not always have the same handedness. One can be right-handed and the other left-handed. Genes, it seems, are only part of the story. They may load the dice, but something else is rolling them. What could that something else be? Perhaps it is the environment of the womb, the position of the fetus, the subtle fluctuations in hormones, the tiny, random events that occur as the brain wires itself together in the dark. All of these could play a role in pushing the developing system toward one side or the other. Some researchers have even found evidence that our handedness may be established before our brain's motor cortex is even connected to the spinal cord, suggesting the preference may begin not in the head, but in the spine itself. And what about the 10%? The left-handers who live in a world designed by and for the right-handed majority. For centuries, left-handedness was viewed with suspicion, associated with clumsiness, stubbornness, even evil. But we now know that it is simply a different and equally valid form of brain organization. In some cases, left-handers may have brains that are less rigidly lateralized, with functions more evenly distributed between the two hemispheres. This different wiring may even confer certain advantages, particularly in creative fields and in sports where unpredictability is a benefit. But the ultimate question remains: why is there a majority at all? Why did our species not settle on a 50-50 split, or on a state of ambidexterity, where both hands were equally skilled? The dominance of the right hand is a puzzle of efficiency. It may be that having one hemisphere specialize in fine motor control, leaving the other free for other tasks, was a more efficient way to wire a complex brain. It was a division of labor that gave our ancestors an evolutionary edge. But we do not know for sure. The preference that guides our every gesture, the simple choice of which hand to use, is a silent echo of a decision that was made deep in our evolutionary past by forces we do not yet understand. It is a mystery written into our very anatomy, a quiet and persistent asymmetry in a world that so often strives for balance. It is a reminder that even the things we know best, the bodies we inhabit every day, are still filled with questions we cannot answer. There is a dark and mysterious power in the human mind, a shadowy twin to the well-known placebo effect. We know that a positive belief, a simple expectation of healing, can sometimes bring real, physical relief. A sugar pill can ease pain. A saline injection can reduce inflammation. This is the placebo effect, the mind's remarkable ability to translate hope into healing. But what happens when the belief is negative? What happens when we expect not healing, but harm? The answer is the nocebo effect, and it is a chilling testament to the power of belief to wound, to sicken, and perhaps even to kill. The nocebo effect is the phenomenon in which a negative expectation of a harmful outcome can actually cause that outcome to occur. It is the dark side of the mind-body connection. If a doctor tells a patient that a procedure will be painful, the patient is more likely to experience intense pain. If a clinical trial participant is warned that a new drug might cause nausea, they are more likely to feel sick, even if they are in the group receiving a harmless placebo. The mind hears the suggestion of harm, and the body dutifully complies. The mystery of the nocebo effect is not whether it is real. The evidence for it is overwhelming. The mystery is how it works. How can a simple thought, an idea, a fear, translate into a measurable physical symptom? The pathways seem to be the same as those of the placebo effect, but running in reverse. A negative expectation can trigger the release of stress hormones, like cortisol, which can increase inflammation and suppress the immune system. It can also activate areas of the brain associated with anxiety and pain, creating a state of hypervigilance where the body becomes more sensitive to any unpleasant sensation. The brain, in a sense, prepares for the worst, and in doing so, it helps to create it. But the power of the nocebo can go far beyond these subtle physiological changes. There are documented cases in medical literature that are truly disturbing. Stories of people who were misdiagnosed with a terminal illness and then rapidly declined and died, only for an autopsy to reveal that they had been perfectly healthy. Stories from cultures with strong beliefs in curses or voodoo, where a person who believes they have been cursed can waste away and die from no apparent physical cause. These cases are extreme, and they are rare, but they suggest that a profound and deeply held belief in one's own impending doom can in some circumstances become a self-fulfilling prophecy. This raises profound and unsettling questions. How much of the suffering we experience from illness is caused by the illness itself, and how much is amplified or even created by our fear of it? When we read a long list of potential side effects on a medication label, are we being informed, or are we being inadvertently programmed to experience them? The nocebo effect presents a deep ethical dilemma for medicine. Doctors have a duty to inform their patients of risks, but how can they do so without planting a seed of negative expectation that could cause real harm? The nocebo effect is a ghost in our biology. It is a demonstration that the boundary between the mind and the body is far more permeable than we imagine. Our thoughts are not just fleeting, ephemeral things. They are biochemical events. They have the power to change our physiology, to modulate our immune system, to create or to amplify pain. And when those thoughts are dark, when they are filled with fear and dread, they can become a poison that we administer to ourselves. We do not yet fully understand the limits of this power. We do not know why some people are more susceptible to the nocebo effect than others. We do not know how to counteract it, how to build a shield of resilience against the power of negative suggestion. It remains one of the most mysterious and humbling phenomena in all of medicine, It is a dark mirror that shows us the incredible power of our own consciousness, a force so potent that it can shape our reality, for better, and sometimes, for worse. There is a quiet and mysterious faculty of the human mind, a silent inner voice that speaks without words and knows without proof. We call it intuition, a gut feeling, a hunch. It is that sudden, unbidden certainty that a particular path is the right one, that a stranger cannot be trusted, that a hidden danger lies just around the corner. It is a form of knowledge that seems to arrive fully formed, bypassing the slow, deliberate machinery of logical thought. For centuries, we have dismissed it as something mystical, a product of emotion, or even supernatural insight. But science is now beginning to understand that intuition is not magic. It is the work of a powerful and sophisticated cognitive system that operates just beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. The mystery of intuition is not that it exists, but how it works. Our conscious mind, the part of us that thinks in language and follows rules, is a powerful tool, but it is also slow and has a very limited capacity. We can only hold a few pieces of information in our attention at any one time. But beneath this narrow spotlight of awareness lies the vast, dark theater of the unconscious mind, a parallel processing system of immense power. It is here, in the silent, hidden depths of our brain, that the true work of intuition takes place. Our unconscious mind is constantly absorbing a torrential amount of information from the world around us. It is tracking subtle facial expressions, the faintest shifts in tone of voice, the complex patterns of a chaotic environment. Most of this information never reaches our conscious awareness. It is too subtle, too complex, too fast, but it is not lost. It is being processed, sorted, and stored, building up a vast internal library of experience and pattern recognition. Intuition, in this view, is the moment when this vast, hidden database delivers a conclusion to the conscious mind. It is not a guess. It is a highly refined form of pattern recognition, a judgment based on a wealth of data that we do not consciously know we possess. Consider the expert, the firefighter, who suddenly feels an overwhelming urge to evacuate a burning building moments before the floor collapses, or the master chess player who instantly sees the winning move without consciously analyzing every possibility. They are not using psychic powers. Their unconscious minds, trained by thousands of hours of experience, have recognized a subtle pattern, a configuration of clues that signals an impending outcome. The conscious mind does not see the pattern. It only receives the conclusion, a sudden, powerful feeling of knowing. The firefighter feels a sense of wrongness. The chess player feels the rightness of a particular move. This is the unconscious mind speaking its own language, the language of feeling and emotion. And yet, this explanation, as powerful as it is, does not seem to capture the full scope of the mystery. Intuition is not limited to experts. We all experience it. We have all had moments of sudden insight, of inexplicable foresight that seem to come from nowhere. Can all of this be explained by unconscious pattern recognition alone? Some researchers wonder if there are other, more subtle mechanisms at play. Perhaps our bodies are picking up on environmental cues that our conscious minds miss. The faint vibrations in the floor, the subtle changes in air pressure, the chemical signals that we are not even aware we can detect. Our intuition may be a conversation not just with our own past experience, but with the physical world itself. And then there is the question of timing. Intuitive insights often seem to come to us when we are not actively thinking about a problem, when we are in the shower or out for a walk, or just about to fall asleep. It is as if the conscious mind with its constant chatter and its rigid logic, has to get out of the way for the quieter, more holistic voice of the unconscious to be heard. This suggests that our best thinking may not be a product of intense, focused effort, but of a delicate dance between conscious intention and unconscious processing, between the focused beam of attention and the diffuse, creative light of a wandering mind. We are only at the beginning of this journey of understanding. We can see the effects of intuition. We can measure its accuracy in a laboratory, but we cannot yet watch it happen in the brain. The inner workings of the unconscious mind are still largely a black box. We know what goes in, and we know what comes out, but the complex, silent computations that happen in between are still hidden from us. Intuition remains a beautiful and humbling paradox. It is a form of thinking that feels like not thinking at all. It is a wisdom that comes from a part of ourselves that we do not truly know. It is a quiet whisper from the depths, a reminder that the greatest intelligence we possess may be the one that operates in the silent spaces beyond our own awareness. For a small number of people in the world, the senses are not separate, isolated channels of information. They are deeply and beautifully intertwined. For these people, a sound can have a color, a name can have a taste, a number can have a personality, and a day of the week can have a location in space. This is synesthesia, a neurological condition in which stimulating one sense automatically triggers an experience in another. It is not a metaphor. It is not an act of imagination. It is a real and involuntary perceptual experience, a secret, hidden layer of reality that most of us will never know. The mystery of synesthesia is a mystery of boundaries. In most of our brains, the processing centers for vision, hearing, touch, and taste are functionally distinct. They are like separate rooms in a house, each with its own job. Information comes in through the eyes and is processed in the visual cortex. Information from the ears is processed in the auditory cortex. But in the brain of a synesthete, it seems that the walls between these rooms are more permeable. There are extra connections, a kind of neural cross-wiring that allows information to spill over from one sense to another. When a synesthete hears a trumpet, the activity in their auditory cortex may trigger a corresponding burst of activity in their visual cortex, creating the genuine and undeniable experience of seeing the color gold. But why does this happen? What causes this unusual wiring in the brain? One leading theory is that we are all born as synesthetes in the infant brain. The different sensory areas are not yet fully separated, and there is a rich and complex web of connections between them. As we grow and our brain matures, a process of pruning takes place. The unnecessary connections are trimmed away, and the senses become more specialized and independent. Synesthesia, in this view, may be the result of a failure of this pruning process. The extra connections that most of us lose are retained, leaving behind a richer, more integrated sensory world. The synesthete, in a sense, is carrying a beautiful and rare echo of their own infancy into their adult life. And yet, this does not explain the sheer variety and specificity of the experience. There are more than 80 different known types of synesthesia. The most common is grapheme color synesthesia, where letters and numbers evoke specific colors. For one person, the letter might always be a brilliant scarlet red, while for another, it might be a calm forest green. These associations are highly personal, but they are also incredibly consistent. If A is red today, it will be red 20 years from now. They are not learned, and they are not chosen. They are simply a fundamental feature of that person's perception. What does this tell us about our own brains? The existence of synesthesia is a powerful reminder that the reality we experience is not a direct, objective picture of the outside world. It is a construction, a story that our brain tells itself based on the sensory information it receives. For most of us, that story is told in a consistent way, with a clear separation between the senses. But the synesthete shows us that there are other ways to tell the story. Their experience reveals the arbitrary nature of our own perceptual boundaries. Why should the sound of a violin not have a texture? Why should the taste of a lemon not have a shape? The fact that it does not, for most of us, is simply an accident of our own neural wiring. And the condition seems to be linked to creativity. Synesthetes are significantly more likely to be involved in the arts than the general population. It is easy to see why. To live in a world where sound has color and words have taste is to have access to a rich and constant source of metaphor and imagery. It is to experience the world with an extra layer of meaning, an extra dimension of beauty. Many famous artists, writers, and musicians, from Vincent van Gogh to Vladimir Nabokov, are believed to have been synesthetes, their unique perceptual worlds bleeding into the colors and textures of their work. We are still at the very beginning of understanding this beautiful and strange condition. We can see the cross-activation in a synesthete's brain using imaging technology. We can map their unique sensory dictionaries, but we cannot yet explain the ultimate why. Why did evolution allow this strange and wonderful trait to persist? Is it simply a harmless quirk of development, a ghost of an infant brain? Or does it confer some hidden advantage, a different way of thinking, and creating that enriches the human experience as a whole? Synesthesia is a window into the mystery of consciousness itself. It shows us that our own reality is just one possible version among many. It is a quiet and beautiful reminder that the world is always richer, stranger, and more interconnected than it seems. Every moment of your waking life, you are the star of a seamless, continuous, and utterly convincing movie. It is a movie filled with sights and sounds and smells and thoughts and emotions and memories, all of which are effortlessly woven together into a single, unified experience. And at the very center of this movie is a protagonist, a character called I. This sense of being a single, coherent self, the feeling that you are the one who is seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, and thinking your thoughts, is the most fundamental and intimate fact of your existence. And yet, it is one of the deepest and most perplexing mysteries in all of science. This is the binding problem. The problem is this: your brain is not a single, unified entity. It is a vast and decentralized network of billions of specialized neurons, all working in parallel. There is no central headquarters, no master control room, no single spot in the brain where everything comes together. When you look at a simple red ball, for example, the experience is not processed in one place. The color red is processed by one set of neurons in your visual cortex. The round shape is processed by another. The motion of the ball is processed by yet another. Your memory of what a ball is and your emotional response to it are handled by completely different regions of the brain, and yet you do not experience a disconnected collection of attributes. You experience a single, unified object, a red ball. So how does the brain do it? How does it take all of these separate, parallel streams of information and bind them together into a coherent whole? How does it know that the redness, the roundness, and the motion all belong to the same object and not to three different objects? And more mysteriously still, how does it bind all of your different sensory experiences, your thoughts and your feelings into the unified experience of a single conscious self? This is the hard part of the binding problem, the mystery of how the brain creates the eye at the center of the movie. One of the leading theories is that the brain uses time to solve the problem. The idea is that all of the neurons that are responding to the same object fire their electrical signals in perfect synchrony in a rhythmic, oscillating pattern. It is as if all the different parts of the brain that are processing the red ball are all humming the same note at the exact same time. This synchronized firing, this temporal rhythm, may be the neural signature that tags all of these different features as belonging to a single object. The brain, in this view, is a vast orchestra, and the unity of our perception is the harmony created by its perfectly timed rhythms. This is a beautiful and compelling idea, and there is some experimental evidence to support it, but it does not solve the entire mystery. Even if the brain uses synchrony to bind features together, who or what is it that experiences this unified whole? The problem of the self remains. If the brain is just a network of neurons, where is the I that is having the experience? Is the self just an illusion? A convenient story that the brain tells itself to make sense of the world. Some philosophers and neuroscientists believe this is the case. The self, they argue, is not a thing, but a process, a constantly shifting narrative created by a particular network in our brain. But this is a deeply counterintuitive idea. The feeling of being a self is so powerful, so persistent, that it is hard to accept that it is just a clever trick of the brain. The binding problem touches on the deepest questions of what it means to be a conscious being. It is the point where neuroscience collides with philosophy. It is a question about the very architecture of reality, or at least the reality that our brains construct for us. We can see the consequences when this binding process fails. In certain neurological conditions, patients can experience a fractured reality. They may be able to see an object's color, but not its shape, or they may lose the sense of ownership over their own thoughts or limbs. These sad and strange cases are a powerful reminder of the incredible and delicate work that our brain is doing every single moment, silently and effortlessly, to create the smooth and coherent world we take for granted. And so the mystery endures. You are reading these words, and you are having an experience of a unified self, reading a unified text in a unified world. But behind the curtain of that experience, your brain is performing an incredible and still unexplained act of creation. It is taking a million scattered pieces of information and weaving them together into the single beautiful and mysterious tapestry that you call you. How it performs this magic trick, how it binds the world and the self together out of the raw material of firing neurons, is a secret that the brain has not yet revealed. There is a quiet and peculiar sensation, a gentle, tingling pleasure that has remained hidden in the fringes of human experience, largely unnamed and unstudied until the age of the internet. For a small but significant portion of the population, certain sounds and sights can trigger a deeply relaxing and euphoric feeling, a warm, static-like tingle that often begins in the scalp and travels down the spine. It is a feeling that has been described as a brain massage, a head orgasm, or a gentle, pleasant shimmering in the mind. This is ASMR, the autonomous sensory meridian response, and it is a profound mystery of sensory perception and emotion. The triggers for this strange and wonderful sensation are often quiet, intimate, and focused. The soft, crinkling sound of paper, the gentle tapping of fingernails on a wooden surface, the slow, deliberate movements of someone carefully folding a towel, and perhaps most powerfully of all, the sound of a soft, whispering voice speaking in a close and personal way. For those who experience it, these simple, everyday triggers can be a powerful antidote to anxiety and insomnia, a key that unlocks a state of deep and blissful calm. The mystery of ASMR is not just what it is, but why it exists at all. From an evolutionary perspective, it serves no obvious purpose. Why would our brains be wired to derive such intense pleasure from the sound of someone whispering or the sight of someone painting with slow, careful strokes? It seems to be a quirk, a beautiful and harmless glitch in our neural wiring. But what kind of glitch is it? One of the most compelling ideas is that ASMR is a leftover, a ghost of an ancient and important social bonding mechanism. The triggers for ASMR, the soft voices, the gentle touch, the focused, caring attention, are all deeply reminiscent of the grooming behaviors seen in our primate relatives, and of the intimate, nurturing interactions between a parent and a young child. Perhaps the tingling sensation is a kind of neurochemical reward, a flood of endorphins, dopamine, and oxytocin, the same molecules involved in bonding, trust, and affection. The ASMR experience, in this view, may be the brain's way of simulating the feeling of being safe, cared for, and deeply connected to another being. It is a kind of social grooming for the modern age, a way to trigger our most ancient comfort circuits through a screen. And yet, not everyone experiences it. The sensation seems to be a deeply personal and idiosyncratic phenomenon. What triggers a powerful response in one person may do nothing for another. This suggests that there may be real physical differences in the brains of people who experience ASMR. Early brain imaging studies have hinted at this, showing that the brains of people with ASMR may have a different functional connectivity, a slightly different way of wiring together the networks involved in sensation, attention, and emotion. The experience may be a product of a unique brain architecture, a different way of seeing and feeling the world. And what about the feeling itself, that strange tingling sensation? It is a physical feeling, but it is also deeply emotional. It is a form of pleasure, but it is not the same as the pleasure we get from food or music. It is calmer, more meditative, more serene. It seems to occupy a unique space in our emotional landscape, a quiet corner that science is only just beginning to explore. The rise of the internet, and particularly of platforms like YouTube, has allowed this once hidden experience to come out into the open. Millions of people who thought they were alone in their strange sensory world have found a global community. An entire genre of media has been created to cater to it, with dedicated artists crafting intricate soundscapes and visual experiences designed to trigger this gentle, euphoric state. And in doing so, they have brought a legitimate and fascinating neurological phenomenon to the attention of science. But for now, the questions far outnumber the answers. We do not yet know the exact neurochemical signature of an ASMR experience. We do not know why certain sounds are more effective triggers than others. We do not know why it is so closely tied to feelings of safety and care. ASMR is a beautiful and strange frontier in our understanding of the human mind. It is a quiet and personal mystery, a gentle, tingling reminder that our brains are filled with secret pathways and hidden pleasures, and that there are still new and wonderful ways of feeling that we are only just beginning to name and to understand. There is a powerful and bittersweet emotion that can ambush us at any time, a feeling that is both a comfort and a quiet ache. It is the scent of rain on a hot pavement, suddenly transporting you back to a childhood summer. It is a forgotten song on the radio, instantly conjuring the face of a lost love. It is the taste of a particular food, bringing back the warmth and safety of your grandmother's kitchen. This is nostalgia, the deep and poignant longing for a past that can never be recovered. And while we all feel its pull, Its true purpose and its immense power over our minds remain a beautiful and elusive mystery. For a long time, nostalgia was considered a medical condition, a form of melancholy, or even a neurological disease. The term itself was coined in the 17th century to describe the intense homesickness felt by soldiers serving far from home. It was seen as a sickness of the soul, a dangerous and debilitating affliction. But we now know that nostalgia is not a sickness. It is a universal and deeply important human emotion, a fundamental part of what it means to have a memory and a sense of self. The mystery of nostalgia is its profound complexity. It is not simply a happy memory. It is almost always a bittersweet experience, a beautiful sadness. We feel the warmth and joy of the remembered moment, but that warmth is tinged with the cold, hard fact of its loss. We are happy that it happened, and we are sad that it is over. It is this unique blend of joy and sorrow that gives nostalgia its incredible emotional power. It is an emotion that allows us to hold two opposing feelings in our hearts at the same time. But why do we do it? What is the function of this emotional time travel? Psychologists are discovering that nostalgia is far from being a useless indulgence in the past. It is a powerful psychological resource. When we feel lonely, a nostalgic memory can remind us of the times we were loved and connected, strengthening our sense of social belonging. When we feel bored or that our life has lost its meaning, nostalgia can remind us of who we once were, connecting us to a continuous and meaningful personal story. It is a kind of emotional anchor, a way of holding on to our identity in the turbulent waters of the present. It tells us that our life has a narrative, that we have a history, and that the person we are today is connected to all the people we have been before. And the triggers for nostalgia are often sensory. It is not a memory that we consciously choose to recall. It is a memory that is summoned, unbidden, by a smell, a taste, a sound. This is because our senses, and particularly our sense of smell, have a direct and powerful connection to the parts of our brain that handle memory and emotion, like the hippocampus and the amygdala. A sensory cue can bypass our rational, conscious mind and plug directly into the deep, emotional archives of our past. It is a key that unlocks a forgotten room in the house of our memory, a room that we did not even know was there. And yet, the past that nostalgia shows us is not always the real past. It is a filtered, edited, and often idealized version. The mind has a gentle way of sanding down the rough edges of our memories, of forgetting the boredom and the anxiety and remembering only the golden glow. Nostalgia is not a perfect historical record. It is a work of art, a beautiful and comforting story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so we are left with this strange and beautiful human tendency. We are the only creatures, as far as we know, that can be so deeply and powerfully moved by a time that no longer exists. We carry our pasts with us, not as a heavy burden, but as a secret garden, a place of comfort and meaning that we can return to whenever we need to. But why we have this unique capacity, why our brains are wired to find such deep and profound meaning in the bittersweet act of looking back, is a question that science can describe but cannot fully explain. Nostalgia is the quiet, gentle ghost of our own history, a beautiful ache that reminds us of where we have been, and in doing so, helps us to understand who we are. And so we come to the final mystery, the one that contains all the others. It is the question that lies at the very heart of your own experience, right here, right now. As you lie here, listening to these words, you are aware you are having an experience. You are not just a machine processing information. You are feeling the weight of the blanket, hearing the sound of my voice, thinking your own thoughts. There is a subjective inner life, a movie playing inside your head that only you can see. This is consciousness. It is the most familiar thing in the world, and it is the greatest mystery in the universe. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, and they are not easy at all, are about explaining the brain's functions, how it processes information, how it controls behavior, how it learns and remembers. We can, in principle, map the circuits. We can understand the mechanics, but the hard problem is different. It is the question of why any of this processing should be accompanied by an experience. Why should the firing of neurons in your visual cortex create the subjective feeling of seeing the color red? Why should the vibrations of air molecules in your ear create the subjective experience of hearing a melody? There is nothing in the laws of physics that says a complex network of cells should have an inner life, and yet it does. This is the great yawning gap in our scientific understanding of the world. We can describe the brain as a physical system, a collection of atoms and molecules following the laws of chemistry and electricity. But that description, no matter how complete, will never seem to explain why it feels like something to be that system. It is like looking at the sheet music for a beautiful symphony. You can analyze the notes, the structure, the harmony, but you cannot, from the sheet music alone, explain the moving, emotional experience of actually hearing the music. Where could this inner light of awareness possibly come from? Some scientists believe that consciousness is an emergent property, something that arises naturally when a system, like the brain, reaches a certain level of complexity and interconnectedness. It is not a separate, ghostly thing, but a holistic property of the network itself, just as the wetness of water is an emergent property of a collection of H2O molecules. This is a promising idea, but it still does not explain why that property should be subjective experience rather than just more complex information processing. Other, more radical theories suggest that consciousness may not be something that the brain creates at all. Perhaps, they say, consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe itself, like space-time or mass. Perhaps every particle in the universe has a tiny rudimentary spark of consciousness, and the brain is simply a highly evolved antenna, an incredibly sophisticated receiver that tunes into and amplifies this universal consciousness. In this view, we do not create our awareness, we are simply a channel for it. This is a beautiful and poetic idea, a way of re-enchanting the cosmos, but it is, for now, far beyond the reach of anything we can test. And so we are left here, in the quiet of the night, at the very center of this profound and personal mystery. You are the one thing in the universe that you can be absolutely certain exists. You know that you are conscious, because you are the one who is doing the knowing, and yet, this most certain of facts is the one that science is least able to explain. Let this final, gentle mystery be the one that carries you into sleep. There is no need to solve it. There is no need to grasp it. It is enough for now, simply, to rest inside it. Imagine your own awareness as a quiet, steady flame in the vast, dark expanse of the cosmos. It is a small light, but it is your light, and it is connected, in some way we do not yet understand, to the deep and silent fabric of reality itself. Let the questions we have explored tonight fade away, like distant stars in the morning sky. They do not need answers now. They are simply reminders of the wonder of being, of the great and beautiful unknown that surrounds us and is within us. Let your breathing slow. Let your body grow heavy, and let your own quiet, mysterious consciousness drift gently into the even quieter, even more mysterious world of dreams. Good night.